Today, I'm excited for this episode of the Coaching Circle as we are talking about strengthening relationships and connections through authentic communication. And I am thrilled for this episode because today's guest is a very wonderful lady that I've worked with very closely over a number of years, and she always brings a smile to my face. Sue Giacobbe is an NLP trainer, a master practitioner specializing in deep transformational work that empowers individuals, entrepreneurs, and coaches to master their minds, expand their potential, and create lasting success. With extensive expertise in neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP, and cognitive behavioral techniques, Sue helps clients break free from limiting beliefs, rewire their thinking for growth, and cultivate resilience in their life, career, and business. Welcome to the Coaching Circle, Sue Giacobbe.
Hello, and thank you for having me on, Toni. I am very excited to be here.
Yes, I'm excited to be here. And, so it's so funny because talking about NLP, and we know NLP is a big part of NLP is anchoring. I have got such a strong anchor with you, which you know what it is already.
Yes.
And the fact that we're laughing probably is, if you understand anchoring, might be a giveaway. But I will never forget in being in the training room, and Sue, I was demonstrating anchoring with you, and I was demonstrating falling down laughing as an anchor, and I swear the pair of us just lost it. And if I remember correctly, I think we were it was like a year or two later, I was demonstrating the same. No, was it even demonstrating or just in the training room? And every time I looked at that part of the training room, I just like the same emotion come up and I would just start laughing. It was hilarious. So it's nice to have an anchor like that attached to you, Sue.
And I've got to say, every time I think about it, or I get to the anchoring and rolling down laughing bit, I do think about us, and that anchor just does get set off. I don't even have to touch anything, it just gets set off.
It's a visual anchor, it's a kinesthetic
Yes.
anchor, it's like an auditory anchor.
It's a good anchor
But
to have.
yeah, it is a good one to have. Laughing is a very powerful state. But before we get too much into any of the NLP talk, I do want to just go back to where all of this started for you. So, because you've been in business for several years now, so tell us a bit about what led you to start your business and why is what you do so important?
So this really started for me from a very young age where I wanted to do psychology. This was an interest of mine. I was excited about doing it. Wanted to learn more. It was a lesson, it was a module in high school that one of our teachers taught us. And from that moment, I was like my spark was lit.
Mm.
And, fast forward, other things happened. I didn't get to do psychology. I didn't get to go to university. I married very early, engaged at 16, married at 17. That was, and I have 4 children from that marriage, which I'm really excited about and grateful for. But the marriage wasn't great in itself. And in that time, I became a very small, dull, person it was all about survival, not about living life fully. It was how do I just get through life? So there came a point in time where I was able to get out of that toxic situation and then begin the journey for myself of healing and transforming again and remembering really who I was at the truest core of me. And once I did that, Toni, once I went down that path for myself, I realized, I remembered really how powerful it is. And that spark ignited, if I can do this, if I can get to the other side and now be living life full of joy and vibrancy and excitement and celebration of life, if I can do that, then maybe I can do it for other people. And
Mm.
so that's where that began for me. I was it didn't happen straight away. So I was working for a very long time, and it came to a point where I thought, I can't not hear this little voice in me that's getting louder and louder and louder about getting out of the 9 to 5 and stepping into running my own business.
Mm.
And the journey of me running my own business then began from that point.
Yeah. So, like it's such an incredible story that you have. And even just then, when you were saying, engaged at 16 and married at 17, and I know it's not like that was uncommon in a time, but when I think about it now, and I know for my daughter being 22 now, like I'm not sure that like she'd be in a place to be married now, you know, 16, 17 is so young. And I think, the thing that stands out for me, so is like, even though, you have had, all these challenges along the way, you are definitely one of the people that stand out to me as someone that just brings so much joy, like that you just live in this space of joy. And I know whenever we catch up, we're always laughing, we're always having a good time. Things
Yeah.
just flow. We end up in the VIP section at events with prime seats, like things just kind of happen. And so I really love that, because I think you are such a great example of how your past doesn't have to define your future, but more than that, just your passion for helping other people as well, and just sharing that is just incredible. So tell us a bit about, I guess, how do you help people now? Like, what is it that you most love helping people with now?
And I'm going to touch a little bit on, you mentioned joy. Joy and freedom are my top values, Toni. And so for me, I experienced what it was like to have it and then not to have it, to be in this world of pain and shutting down and almost losing that connection to self and becoming very robotic. And
Mm,
then reigniting that and remembering that's who I am. That story doesn't define me, like you said. And I had made a decision. There were two mantras that I had, and one was I choose life. I choose life. I don't
mm.
know how, but I choose life and
That
it's
gave
going to
me
show up for
goosebumps.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And the other one was I was determined not to become bitter and twisted and resentful, because if I went down that path, then he still won. He still had
Yes.
a hold over me, even though he didn't. That was me staying in that space.
Yes. So I love this so much. And I think this is one of the biggest learnings that I've had out of, a lot of the work that I've done. But I think it's really powerful for people to know. And I use with my clients as well, is that I think so often we get caught up in that the most important thing that ever was happened to us was whatever trauma that we've experienced, whether it was in childhood or, earlier on in life. But
Yeah,
it's that, like what you just said, it's like that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is the choice that you make about how you rise above.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I could walk away from it, which I did. And then my choice was, did I keep myself in that prison, or did I take steps to then free myself completely in my own mind?
Yeah.
Because that's the other prison, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so my thing was, I don't know how I'm going to achieve it. I just know what I want.
Yeah.
I choose life.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is such a good point as well. So, because I think that is the thing that, like what you just exactly said then, is that I'm not going to keep myself in that prison, because so many people are in self-made prisons. Well, no, they're not self-made, should I say, but like self-enforced prisons of stuff that's happened to them long ago, where those people are no longer in their life or anything else, but they're still trapped in that as if it's happening
Yeah,
to them now.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's realizing that, isn't it, that you actually have a choice of going, I don't need to stay, like I'm in control of this.
Yes, yes. And the change didn't happen overnight, Tony, because
Mm,
unfortunately I'd been conditioned and there was fear involved and there was doubt and I'd lost my confidence and my
mm,
voice. So then was a journey of, moving forward and doing things differently to make the changes that need to take place within myself, physically, emotionally, spiritually, like all of that.
mm. Yes, yeah. And I think, I wonder if you'd be interested, or if it would be okay for you to be interested too, if it would be okay for you to share a little bit. I mean, obviously, you don't have to go into a whole bunch of details, but I think the important thing is that I think for anyone's healing journey, or, transformation, is knowing that it's never just like this kind of, oh, on one day I decided I was going to change my life, and then da, 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 like I skipped off into the sunset. It doesn't tend to happen quite like that, does it, Sue?
No, it does not,
Yeah.
Tony. There were ups and downs. There were roller coasters. There were discovering, different layers and levels of myself, even, and what were the things that were holding me back? What were the things that were controlling me? And fear was a big part of it, Tony.
Mm,
I mean, I grew up in a Greek cultural home and I love so many of our cultures.
mm,
And there were things that were, fear was the way to help protect us. It was what our
mm.
parents thought. If they put some
Yeah,
fear in us, then we'll stay safe because they had fears about things. So we
yeah.
inherit their fears already. So we start off, being conditioned, and the values that they held conditioned us, and the religious beliefs they held conditioned us. So as much as there are beautiful things there that I still hold dear, there are
Mm,
things that I had to unlearn
yeah.
and learn new ways of doing it. I was wired a certain way, not by birth, but by conditioning in my
Mm,
environment.
mm. Yeah, and that's really powerful. So I think as well is that, this can be a big conflict for a lot of people, right? And like
Mm.
I've definitely worked with people in different cultures, and most cultures around the world have that kind of dichotomy. There's lots of beautiful things about the culture, but then there's other stuff it is cultural, which just means it's like practices that have been repeated over the years, right? And it becomes that sort of thing, but that they're not necessarily helpful, or they could be outdated, or like you said, they're all fear-based, and there may have been a time where, like, safety was such a bigger deal that they were doing whatever they could to survive. And and I guess it's that it comes into anything though, even not even just cultural, but like when we think about our parents and that conflict that people have about, well, they did this, but I still love them, right?
Yes.
And it's understanding those different sides of it. So how do you think that you've been able to best integrate that for yourself, Sue?
I had to learn, and I'll say how in a minute, but I had to learn that it's not a but. They've hurt me, but I still love them. There's an and in there.
Mm,
However, first I had to acknowledge the hurt.
mm,
Yep, there was something there that wasn't helpful to me.
mm.
At the time, it's the only way they knew how to do this,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
First, I had to acknowledge myself and say, yes, that did happen. And now what do I want to do about it?
yeah,
Now, how do I want it to be?
yes.
Because I knew I didn't want to be stuck in that space of hurt and pain and fear and doubt. I didn't want to be stuck in those strategies that I had developed, the coping strategies, which was people pleasing. Stay small, stay silent, don't be seen. It's safer that way. I didn't want to live that way anymore.
Mm,
So if I didn't want to live that way anymore, what did I need to do to make the changes?
Yeah.
And they were scary. Some of the things that I had to take responsibility for myself were scary because it wasn't going to be done to me. The transformation wasn't going to be done to me.
Mm.
I needed to go through the process and take the steps and the actions
Yeah.
that were scary with the guidance of people that I trusted and, loved, whether they were friends, whether they were coaches, whether they were psychologists, or whoever it was that I built a team around me,
Mm.
then go on the journey with them. But at the end of the day, they could take me to the water. It was I that had to drink from that magical water and make the
Yeah.
changes.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think like in this space as well, and what I've seen with you and things that I've experienced in myself as well is like we were saying, all these things that happen over the years and whatever else. But what I see as a pattern is that there's somewhere these things that get passed down have to stop. Like there's someone that has to be the interrupter, and that in that space it requires a lot of bravery and courage to stand up and to say, you know what, no, I'm not going to accept these things, I'm going to do things differently, and I am willing to wear the discomfort of that me being this way might make other people feel uncomfortable
Yes,
because
yes,
I'm here for a purpose. Like there's a bigger purpose behind it. It's not just about me. It's like I'm interrupting this. Like I'm the disruptor. There's a bigger purpose that this is serving.
yes. And there is a fear that comes with that around alienation.
Mm,
And, at a primal level, we need to be part of a tribe to stay safe.
yes.
And so we have this association to, if I stand up and speak up for myself, if I disrupt and say this isn't okay and make the changes, am I going to get, kind of pushed out of the community and be on my own? What we don't realize is we are creating a new community of people like us that are saying, yes,
Yeah.
we want the same. So we now connect with like-minded people who begin to support us and encourage us, and we find our some strength and support in that as well.
Yeah.
So the times that I didn't have the strength in myself, Toni, the people around me, I drew from the strength that they had for me,
Yes.
and that
Yes.
they held that space and believed in me and cared for me in a way that was empowering, not rescuing me.
Yeah, yeah. And this is a big thing because often when you've had that sort of conditioning, you feel powerless or you feel like you're not the authority, right? And that you have to placate others for your safety. But that's the transition, isn't it? I think is like realizing, you know what, I am my own power and my own authority. And if you don't like it, I'll find other people who will support that.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. And even though consciously I wasn't aware that that were the words, in that succinct way, it was a day by day thing that was strengthening. It was a day by day decision that was formulating and strengthening.
mm,
And there's a song that comes to mind that was, a favorite of mine at the time because I'd go forward and I'd go backwards, and then I'd go forward two more steps, and I'd
mm,
fall and I'd get up. So there's
mm.
a song in it's I can't remember who it's by, but it says, "I fall down, but I get up
Yeah,
again."
I've again, yeah. You ain't never gonna keep me down.
Correct.
Is that Chumbawamba or something? Is
I
that
can't remember, but
that one?
that song just kept playing in my head, Toni.
Yeah,
Like I'd fall down, I'd have a cry, I'm like, this is hard. And then, those words would come to mind and I'd
yeah,
get up and I'm like, right, it's take two, it's another day.
yeah,
And the people that were around me would give me the strength and support me. The coaches that I had around me would help me work through what are the next steps that I need to take? What
yeah,
could I do differently? And how could I move through this in a different way? And then take the action. And I noticed that when I took the action, I moved forward quicker, easier, further.
Mm,
When I stopped taking the action is when I would go slower and hit maybe a wall. But even
yeah.
the walls that I would hit, I realized later they were just the next level that I needed to move through. And so there was that resistance to this new next level,
Mm,
right? This
yeah.
new floor in the building that I was traveling up.
Yeah. It's like it is very much like a game, isn't it? It's like
Yep.
that, and I'm thinking like the game that comes to my mind is like the old Donkey Kong, and it's just like, you know,
Mario.
yeah. And you're just like,
Yes.
oh, I'm just got to get over and I've got to work out
Yes.
how to swing on that vine correctly to get across that gap to not get hit by a coconut or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. And the whole time, my brain was being rewired and my nervous system was getting used to new ways. Because
Mm,
don't forget, our nervous system wants to go back to what's familiar, which
yeah.
is not always resourceful and helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that thing people go, oh, the comfort zone. It's like, no, it's not comfortable. It's just familiar.
And it becomes the dead zone
Yeah.
because when we stay in that familiar and we're not growing, we're stagnating. And when
Yes.
stagnating comes this apathy, this mediocrity, this we're not thriving anymore. We're
Yes.
just existing this life that isn't fulfilling or satisfying.
Yeah. And so, do you know what's just popped to mind actually that I'd be really interested on your view on this because I've definitely found that, and I agree with everything that you've said. And I think one of the things that has kept me going in business and my own personal growth really comes down to faith, like really having faith and trust. And I'm not an overly religious, well, I'm not religious at all, to be honest, but like I've always been spiritual in some kind of way. And I find along my journey as I go, I've got more and more appreciation for religions and what they do for people.
Mm,
But this is not necessarily meant to be a religious conversation. But
yeah.
what do you think, like for you, what is the role of that faith and trust for you?
Absolutely was key to my moving forward because I grew up in religious environment and it was
Mm,
very rich. The Greek Orthodox religion is very rich in, the Holy Spirit leading us, right?
mm,
So it was this concept that I grew up from with a child that there was something that if I trusted in and listened to, I would hear the voice that led me forward. Right?
yes. Oh, that's giving me goosebumps. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was very, very powerful for me. And I held on to that so strongly, even more strongly as I was going through what I was going through and being guided. And that's why I said earlier, it's about physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, that holistic approach to moving forward
Mm,
and doing the work that we need to do and trusting that it's going to be all right and
yeah.
trusting that it's going to be okay. Even Tony, when I was on the floor in a, like kind of in a curled
Fetal
up,
position. Yeah.
because I actually, in the physical, I couldn't see how. And mentally, the things that were telling me it's not possible, I
Mm,
holding me back, but just trusting that it's going to be okay somehow. And, I could tell you stories where, there were times where I had no money, none, and I had no money to go buy bread for the kids so we could make lunches for them to go to school. And
mm,
I didn't know how I was going to do the shopping. And the kids were young and they were at school. And then I would just keep trusting. And I remember I'd go into the shower, I'd be in tears, I'd get that out of my system, and then I'd go, right, get on with it.
yeah.
And I'd walk out, get dressed, and I'd, get into my day, but I just kept trusting. And then things like my mum would knock on the door and she'd come and say, "Oh, I just thought I'd drop by because the ladies at the church put some money together and they wanted me to give it to you." And Tony, it would be the exact amount of money that I needed to go and do my shopping that day.
Wow.
There
Wow.
was things like that throughout my life, and it still gives me goosebumps when I remember it because I didn't know what was going on in the background. These women, deciding to come together and put money in an envelope for me. I just was trusting that something
Yes.
was going to
Yes.
happen.
And this just comes to that whole belief of that you can, it shows up in all kinds of ways. The universe has my back. There's a bigger plan for me. There's someone
Yes.
watching over me. And I think that is the thing that always keeps, I know, me moving forward. And I think a lot of people that get into that space of faith and trust in whatever situation it is, and it doesn't have to be a traumatic situation. It can just be like even if we talk about manifestation, right? Like
Yeah.
that it all comes to that there's trust and faith that what I need, like I'm here for a purpose, and where it is that I'm moving to, there's trust
Yeah.
and faith that I'm being supported, that I'm going to get what I need, that the way is going to open up. And I think that is at the core of any goal achieved, any wish fulfilled, any,
Yes.
transformation.
Yes.
Yeah,
And we know that where our focus goes, the
energy
energy follows,
flows.
right? Yeah. And
Yes.
so I was a dreamer from a young child. My mum used to tell me off. She's like, "Stop dreaming. You got to get real in this world,"
Yeah.
But I was
Get
a
back into
dreamer.
the fear-based reality.
Yes. Look how good it is for me. Not. Um, and I've always dreamt of what is possible, even before I knew anything about visualization or manifestation, or it just made me feel good. I knew that when I stepped into that, it made me feel good. And I just had
Yes.
this hope of what is possible. I didn't have the answers in that moment, but I always dreamed of having, I wanted six children. I had four. I had to stop at four, but I always dreamed about, as from a very young girl, of having a big family that was my family. And I didn't know
Yeah.
how it was going to happen, when it was going to happen. It was just this thing. And it's this beautiful gift that, came to be that I absolutely am so grateful for.
Yeah.
Um, I've dreamt about this house that we live in at a time that I did not have money, and neither did my husband. We were both in a situation where we were renting, and we didn't know how we were going to put together a deposit for a house. Like, it seemed impossible, but the possible was a dream in my visioning, in my dreaming it, in my believing that it's possible, it came to be.
Yes. Yes. Oh, this is incredible. And like, so I think we could talk about this kind of stuff all day. Um, but I want to bring it back into like, how has all of this stuff that we've been talking about, and I think one of the things that I've always noticed about you, Sue, is that we connected like, as soon as we met, we just connected really well.
Yeah.
And I've always like really thought of you fondly. Like you're someone whenever I think, really like you're such a caring, beautiful person. And I think there are certain elements about what creates that when you connect with people. And I think it's something that you've definitely had an unconscious competence about throughout your lifetime, through however that's evolved, but it now plays a big part in the work that you do and how you help people. So can you talk a bit about that, Sue? What do you really believe about, how you communicate and how you connect, and why that's important?
Absolutely. What I learnt, Tony, is the language we use, you know, in our own mind
Mm,
and with one another is really important because language language comes in different ways. First of all, there's the words.
Yes.
There's the how we are in presence with one another. So communication comes in different forms. Connecting with people is not just about the words, that's a big part of it, but it's also about the way that we connect visually. So our eyes connecting, noticing our body language, understanding you. So when I know what's important to you, what you like, how you like to be, and I align in that with you, our vibration, our energetic connection aligns, our values align, we're going to have this rapport, right? So building the rapport is about communicating verbally and non-verbally.
Mm, yes. Yes. And I like you said, is that about getting in rapport? Because like these skills that you have, Sue, obviously you have developed over a lifetime, and but you've used them in a lot of different aspects, because I know like now you teach coaching and communication skills in NLP, and you've done a lot of facilitation with groups and things, but you've also had a really interesting career where these skills have served you really well. Tell us a bit about like where, like how this was an asset to you even before you started coaching and teaching communication skills.
Yes, and even before I realized that it is a thing, right?
Yeah.
Relationships is really important to me. So
Mm,
connecting and forming relationships is, one of my high priorities. I don't even know if priorities is the word, but it's just something that is kind of at the core
intrinsically
of me.
driven.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And so I am interested in people. I am interested in what they're interested and what serves them,
Mm,
right? Now, we can talk about how did I get here, but at the end of the day, this is where I'm at. So whether it was in as a young woman, entering into the world of restaurants, because one of the first thing I did was run a restaurant,
mm,
and connecting with people and giving them an experience that they could walk away and feel really good about. So joy comes into that, right? Bringing joy,
yeah.
me, there's joy within me, but also bringing joy into their little experience. That was important.
Yeah.
So that experience, then working in real estate. Now, working in real estate, developing rapport was important, but it was about building the relationship and how could I serve these people in a way that they walked away either selling a house or buying a house feeling really happy about the whole process. Now,
Mm,
the reality is not everyone buys and sells under happy circumstances.
yeah.
So some of my clients were either divorcing.
Mm,
So I had, husband and wife or partners that I needed to work with both of them, but they didn't like each other and they didn't trust each other. So here
yeah.
comes an agent coming in to sell their house. Either the wife has brought me in or the husband has brought me in. And my role is to make sure that they both feel that I'm serving them
Mm,
equally. So
yeah.
that was really important. How I then related and connected with both individuals, knowing that I was there to serve them for a greater purpose, which was so that they can resolve this issue and both come out of it, well, and it be as stress-free as possible.
Yeah.
Dealing with, I remember this one particular client, she was an amazing lady and she's stayed in my mind because she did this with such grace and elegance. She was dying, but she wanted to settle all her estate and affairs so there were no issues for her children after her death.
Oh, wow.
So she went about selling all of her assets in her estate so she could then divvy it all up. Now, the experiences that I had with this woman were amazing, and we would sit and have wonderful conversations. And it needed to be done in a way that was honoring her.
Mm, yes.
So there was that. There was then I worked in teams. I, trained other women in, was in a networking organization and training women to go, to connect with the product, but also to feel good about themselves first.
Mm,
Because when we go out in business, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment, but when we go out in business, we become vulnerable and
yeah.
stuff comes up for us.
Yes, yes. That's one of the key things that I hear, especially women say, is like they feel like, oh, I hate selling myself and I hate promoting myself. And that's the thing. It's like, well, number one, we got to get that out of your head that that's what you're
Correct.
doing. But it is that kind of icky feeling that people get,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And
Mm,
so what are they saying in their head about themselves and how they're judging themselves, right? So
yeah.
working with these women to work through some of that stuff and then be really comfortable with the product and train them around that. Now, I
Mm,
had no training in coaching or any of that when I was doing this, but I recognized it as something that was coming up for them.
mm,
And then I went into education, and I worked with teams, and I worked with managers, and I worked with my own team then. And so learning how to build relationships, because not everyone is excited about a new manager that comes in to manage their team, right?
no,
So then
yeah.
how do you build rapport and how do you connect with people so that you are serving them? So
Yes.
leadership isn't just about you're now, leading a team. It's about how do you serve your team. But first, how do you get to know each of your individual team members and what are their needs, their desires, their values? How do you build rapport with them? How do you connect so you can go on a journey with them? And I wish I knew the things that I learned later at the beginning of all of these journeys.
Yes, yes. And I think that's a big one and especially, I mean, I haven't been in the workforce as such. I've been in my own business for several years now, but there's not a lot of people, I think, in leadership. Well, there didn't used to be, certainly, that really understood that piece about relationships. And I think my experience, I had a couple of really good leaders, but a lot of people, it was like it was a bit egotistical. Oh, like, oh, well, I'm above you and I'll tell you what to do and da da da. And
Yep.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
there was no relation. Well, there was a relationship, I guess, of how we were relating to each other, but it wasn't necessarily in a positive sense.
Correct, correct. And what I noticed were there were a lot of people, and it was the same with me when I was promoted into management. There were a lot of people that did their job really, really well. And
Mm,
so those above them thought, oh, we'll make them a manager of the team.
yes, which is different skill set.
Correct. And there was not the development then given to them or the opportunity to learn, all right, what does that look like? What does leadership and management look like? And develop those new skills that are required to lead a team because they're different
Yeah,
to
being good at
being
your
in
job.
the team. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
yes,
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 yes.
yes.
And so the other thing that comes into this, um, Tony, is we all have our own conversations that we have in our own head. We have our own values, we have our own belief system, how we perceive the world.
Mm,
Now we put two people who have their own values, belief system, perceptions, their own language going on in their own mind, come together to try and work out a problem.
mm,
If we don't know and understand each other's perceptions, and first of all, if we don't even understand that that's going on for us, number
yeah,
one, we don't
yeah,
have that awareness.
yeah.
And number two, don't understand that somebody else has got it going on for themselves. And so, of course, how we communicate is going to come from a whole different world.
Yes.
It's like speaking two different languages.
So true, isn't it, Sue? I think that was one of the biggest ahas I got when I first learned NLP all those years back was like most people or everyone is just in that I'm living in reality. I'm living in reality and this is reality. How do I know it's reality? Because I can see it, I can hear it, I can feel it, I'm thinking it, da da da. Must be reality for everyone. And so
Yeah.
someone else, like people just don't get that understanding that your reality is only how you perceive it. somebody else's reality can be completely different. And there's nothing to say who's right or wrong.
And yet we feel like we are right,
Yes, of
right? So
course. Yeah. It's
we,
that egoic identity that will die to be right. This is how it is. I know how it is. Yeah.
correct. So we will do anything to prove that we are right. And sometimes we even self-sabotage without
Mm,
knowing that we're doing that,
yes. Just
right?
to keep within that, this is how it is. Yeah.
Yes, because if it isn't this, then who am I? And what was all of this that I thought it was?
Yes. Yes.
And this was part of my journey, was understanding that I wasn't an identity that was created for survival purposes.
Mm,
That isn't my story. But letting go of that means going into the unknown and trusting that it's going to be okay in the unknown.
mm,
And what I know now is that actually that is where the growth happens, is when we open up our mind and become curious
yes.
as to what else is there,
Yes. Yes.
and
And
that I
that's the,
am me.
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the powerful thing of NLP, isn't it, really, is that it gives you that structure of how do you discover what else is true for you?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And so it's only when we are able to be open and curious and be interested in somebody else's perception or point of view that we can form relationships and meaningful connections at a deeper level,
Mm,
even with ourselves.
yes. Yes. Absolutely. And this is where, like you were saying this before, we get to that. It's not, oh, I believe this, but you believe that. It's the and.
Yes,
Yeah. It's the two things can exist at the same time.
yes,
And that's when you can get that concept, it's like then somebody else having a different perception or thought or whatever isn't a threat to your reality.
yeah,
They can
absolutely.
work together alongside each
Yes,
other.
yes.
Yeah.
This is where um, amazing, innovative creations and discoveries take place, is when you have a group of people, whether it's scientists, whether it's um, innovators, thought leaders, who
Mm,
can come together and alongside each other present different points of views, different possibilities. And because there is open communication, open dialogue within their own selves and with each other, new, beautiful, amazing things are born
mm.
through that.
Yes, yes. And that's the thing, isn't it? I think it always comes back to that knowing that you're okay and you're valid and you exist and other things can at the same time.
That's
And
right.
that's when you're open to that. I think it makes it easy because I think the thing is as well is that, like you were saying, if you're in that fixed mindset of, this is how things are and that's it, and anything I can't accept anything else because that's going to like, you know, displace me and my validity or whatever else. And we move into that more of a space of like, I can exist, I'm okay and I'm whole and inherently valuable as I am. And I can always learn new things and become more of who I am. It's not like, oh, something else is going to make me less than.
Correct. Because we believe that we've arrived when we've learnt something and we've conquered it, that we've arrived.
Yes.
That isn't growth. That isn't evolution. That isn't organic thriving.
Mm.
That is another step towards the next step.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
And the thing that excites me about growth, Sue, is I always think like just imagine if you had it all worked out, when you were 16, you had it all worked out. You're like, I'm off getting engaged now and married, whatever, wherever people are when they're 16. And then that's the capacity that you're at for the rest of your life. I'm like, oh my God, that would be like number one, the most boring thing in the whole world.
Yes,
But like, you would be so limited. So I think that's the exciting thing about growth is and learning new things. It's not a threat to you, it's an opportunity, it's expansion,
yes,
it's
yes,
variety.
yes. And have you noticed when somebody makes a breakthrough that everybody thought this is not possible, right? So
Yes.
this person makes a breakthrough. And everybody around has been saying, that's not possible. That can't happen. But this person doesn't believe it. And they go ahead and they make that breakthrough and they prove that it is possible.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, people then, because they've seen it happen, start to shift
Start doing it.
their
Yes.
way of thinking. There are
I'm
people,
thinking Roger Bannister and what was it, the 4 Minute Mile?
that's
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah. Yeah.
yes. When I read that story, I'm like, this is so true.
Yeah. And it opens up the floodgates of people going, oh, it's possible.
Possible. And so
Yes.
once he smashed through and showed that it's possible to do the mile in 4 minutes, now, people were then smashing that record. And
Yeah.
now there was this floodgate of people thinking, if that's possible, let's just try a little bit further and see where we
Yes.
go.
Yes.
And so when we stay in that space of that little bubble. That's why, I think I go back to my mantra. I choose life. Life is growth and it's evolving and it's blooming and it's flourishing and it's the rivers flowing, beautiful fresh water and new organic matter, growing and thriving in these ecosystems. That is what I think of. That is when I think of life. I
Yes.
choose life. That is us if we
Yeah.
stay open and curious and look at what's possible and hold on to that.
Yes. I love that. And I think, so much like, and we'll talk a bit more about NLP before we run out of time. But, I think that doesn't matter what modality it is that you learn or you do or whatever, none of it matters without having that kind of intention or belief behind it, because that's the energy of change, right? That's the energy of change and transformation.
Yeah.
But like I know for me, NLP was like the modality that was like, this seems to give me the most sense and the structure of, okay, so I can have all these ideas and these feelings and these values and everything else about how wonderful things can be, but how do we bring that into the physical reality? How do we do the actual shifts, the changes? And I've found for me that was NLP. And like you said, like the language, how we talk to ourselves, but understanding how we think. But then how do we actually change the things in our mind? Can you talk a bit about that, Sue, and like, what that was like for you in finding that space?
Yes. So, as part of my journey to heal and transform, I saw psychologists and I saw counselors. I was excited about what was showing up. I went and did counseling studies. And I remember doing the counseling studies and I thought, I'm enjoying this, but I don't know how I'm going to use this. Like I wanted to be a counselor, but I couldn't see myself exactly what that was going to look like. I couldn't picture it.
Mm.
Fast forward many years, and I came across NLP coaching. Now, the one thing that I struggled with the other modalities was like, okay, now I'm fully aware of all of the stuff that happened, how that's, kind of impacted my life. And, yes, I want to grow and transform, but what are the steps? What's the structure now to move me forward, right? I
Yes.
don't want to keep telling the story. Like the
Yeah.
story is the story. I'm done.
Which can be a lot of counseling. It's like, yeah, let's just
Keep
talk
telling the
about it. Okay.
story. And all I
Yeah.
was doing, and now I understand why I was feeling a bit stuck too, because all I was doing is staying in that story.
Yeah.
Fast forward,
Which can
and
be validating to a point, but then what? Yeah.
that was my thing. I was like, yes, now I feel good about everything. It's not me, blah, 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 blah. But how do I move forward was my thing. What are the
Yeah.
steps and the actions that I take. And I wanted to have something there that was a bit concrete, but I hadn't yet quite worked out what that looked like. Fast forward many years, I come into, I connect with a business coach. She connects me with you, and I do an NLP breakthrough. And I've got to say, Toni, that when, the word NLP breakthrough, it was a breakthrough for me to the next level, where in, 5 sessions, I think, or 6 sessions, the breakthrough that I had, that was when my mind went, and I'm like, oh my God,
Yeah.
this is what I want to do for other women.
Yeah.
Now I know exactly how it all comes together. Now, all of the stuff before was part of my journey. I get it.
Yeah.
But it all came together because in that moment, I'm like, oh, and now I have the tools and strategies to eliminate that old stuff and rewire my brain with new things that I can put in there. That's great because I was always a dreamer. I could always visualize what it might be like.
Yes.
I have a way of reframing and rewiring new thoughts. I can eliminate the negative, beliefs and
Yeah.
the emotions that we attach to my old stories and rewire new ways of thinking and believing and being and living.
Yes. And bringing that into your current reality, right?
Yes. And it was also part of my physiology.
Mm.
And making it really concrete that I am responsible
Mm.
for how I
Yes.
move forward and the actions that I take or don't take. It's my choice. Even though I did the breakthrough, it was still my choice to adopt that and take that on and take the actions that I needed to take to keep the wiring and the embedding of these new beliefs and values into my psyche and my physiology.
Yes. Yeah. And that's what I loved about learning NLP as a tool set because um and I'm sure you'll agree, Sue, but like I similar to you, before I learned NLP, I went to lots of different things and landmark forums and
Yep.
seminars and all kinds of stuff. And it would be like, oh yeah, I feel a bit better. Or in some instances, geez, my problems aren't as bad as those people. Some of the things that I went to, I was just like going, oh my God. Um, but at the end of it, I was like, well, now what? Like, what do I do now?
Yeah.
And it was only in like learning those NLP skills. It's like, yes, okay, I can coach people and that's fabulous. But it changed how I parent. It changed how I dealt with my health. It changed my relationships. Like I then had the skills to change every part of my life.
Yes. And for me, it felt like this was a gift that I just received. So, doing the NLP breakthrough, I wasn't thinking about others at that point. It was about me and
Yes.
doing all of the work for me. But then I realized, oh my goodness, I can now gift this to other people.
Yeah.
And so now that I've seen how it's playing out in my life, I'm so sold on this
Yes.
that now this is the vehicle that I want to get into and use to help navigate, you know, the journey with other people.
Yeah.
And that is when, even though I had already started my business and I decided that, I wanted to help other women, I was still formulating exactly what that would look like. And I had my own little concepts, which was about connecting back to ourself and remembering ourself and igniting that light within us and then becoming that truest essence of who we are. But I hadn't yet worked, I didn't have the strategies, if you like, fully.
Yeah.
But when I did NLP, I'm like, oh wow, this is now the toolkit that is the bits that fit and make the puzzle complete for me.
Yes. It's like the how to.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. And now I have tools and strategies that are a structure that I can assist other people.
Yeah.
And then I did the training. And then I became, a practitioner and a master practitioner with you in NLP coaching, and grew my business and got excited even more and more on a larger scale of how I could help other
Mm.
people. And then it went to the next level of, and now I want to learn how to be a trainer so that I can do the training and facilitate the training and have people come in the room for 7 days or 14 days and really go deeply immerse in this, for one, for themselves,
Yeah,
and two, for what that then they can do for others,
they can
whether
do.
it's their
Yeah.
family, their colleagues, whether they want to be a coach or not, it's still they then will be that in all of those environments.
Yes, yeah, that is definitely the thing. Like when I was training, because as you know, I taught NLP for 8 years and then
Yes,
only recently stopped. And this is why I'm so excited that you'll continue and you've been training and that continues on because it's that ripple effect that just keeps going out every time people have these skills to change themselves. Number one, that has a ripple effect on everyone they interact with. But then when they have the skills and they want to use them helping other people, then that then ripples out even further and further. So it's,
absolutely.
yeah, that and
Absolutely.
just it's always blown my mind thinking
Yeah.
about that.
And for me, it was always represented by a light.
Mm,
And so for me, it was reigniting that light within us. And then we pass that light on. And
yes.
we pass that light on to someone who passes it on to others. And then there is, and I always used to visualize this, standing on a stage, and this was way before I was even, like I had only just started my, coaching, but standing on a stage where I'm got a candle and I'm lighting somebody else's light, and they light each other's light, and then they turn around and they light other people's lights, and the whole room goes from darkness to light because
Yes.
now we've shared our light that
Yes.
we radiate. It's us,
So it's not about getting rid of the darkness, it's just about bringing the light.
correct? And how we light each other up and how we share that light from within
Mm,
us when we're lit
mm,
up.
yes.
And it is that ripple effect.
It's so interesting. I was having a conversation with someone the other day, and and I think sometimes there's a lot of, people get a lot of stuck into that. Oh, we've got to fight this, we've got to fight the war, we've got to fight this, we've got to fight that. And oh, there's these evil people in the world. And it's just like, you know what? We like sometimes it's easy, people get stuck in that, oh, there's so much bad in the world, but it's not about quantity, it's about quality of energy. And I think this is the thing to know is that the more that people raise their frequency and they're shining their light and they let go of all the stuff that's not the truth of them, the power and the energy and the influence that they have in that space is so more powerful
Yeah,
than any of the darkness. And I think that's
absolutely.
the thing. Like, we just got to keep focus in that, like, focusing on what it is that you want, because that's where the power is.
Absolutely. And this is why how we communicate with ourselves and how
Mm,
we communicate with others, the conversations we have with other people can be either empowering or disempowering.
yes.
We can stay and having these negative conversations in our head about how it's a big bad world out there, and then keep sharing that with each other. It's a big bad world out there.
Mm,
And we just stay in that space of fear.
mm,
Or we can say, yes, there are some not great stuff, things happening in the world. And who am I going to be so that
yeah.
I can impact and influence others to lift
Yeah.
to lift us from this place of fear and doubt and, staying small to expansion.
Yes. Yeah. What do I want to be contributing to the world? What do I want to bring
Correct.
to the world that gives people something to focus on? Like,
Correct.
yeah,
Yeah.
because there is so much
Because
good happening. Yeah.
there is, and we don't talk about it and we don't focus on it the same way that we focus about all the bad things that are happening.
Mm,
And so all of the good stuff stays small and silent and hidden. And
mm,
we buy into that fear, which only keeps us trapped and small. And what's the point? We're all going to die. Like, you could go to this
Yeah.
very extreme space. But I keep going back to I choose life.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
have equal power to keep reigniting life and creating life and joy and spreading love and
Yes.
freedom rather than fear, because they're both there. Which are we choosing to spread?
Absolutely. And this is, comes back to Sue. Well, I've said this before in this episode, is that this is the thing, it's the intention behind what it is that you do. And I love the intention that you have behind everything that you do. And like I said, it's why that you're anchored in my mind in such a positive light, because you do just bring so much good to the world, to my life, to so many people's lives, your clients, and definitely what you're doing in the NLP space. I am right behind. And so I would love to know, Sue, just because, like I said, you and I, we could just keep talking and talking.
Forever.
And like, I know it's all the good feels in it for me, and there is for you, and like I'm sure it has been for people that listen. But if someone is looking at, so who are the types of people that come and do NLP training with you? They could be people like, is it, that they're doing for their own personal development or their career advancement or business? Like, who are the people that come and do training with you?
Definitely, yes. So there are people who are, yes, it's like, okay, my own personal development. I really want to deal with this once and for all and thrive. I don't want to
Yeah.
be kind of wishy-washing my life away. Definitely those people. There are the people who either have coaching businesses themselves and want to add this powerful tool to their toolkit, or would like to start a coaching business. There are
Yeah.
people that are in leadership or in looking to grow their own career, or are in the world of sales and working with other people, influencing, whether they're working in government or whether they're working in corporate. It's the range of people that no matter what they're doing, they're either they've got themselves to deal with, or they're building relationships and connections with other people, and they want to have a powerful impact and a positive impact in their lives.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is the key thing, right? Like, I would agree with that. Why do people come and learn skills like NLP? Because they want to have a positive impact on the world.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. So whether it's a positive, powerful impact on yourself, on others, this tool, I love it. It excites me. I'm passionate about it. And all of the things linked to it, and how we can free ourselves of the traps and the prisons that were there, that we created, that we thought were protective. They're
Yeah.
not. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Sue Giacobbe, it's been such a pleasure speaking with you. Now, if someone wants to get in contact with you, I know you do a one-to-one coaching and you run NLP certification trainings, and you run some communication workshops. What's the best way for people to find you? I'll put the details in the show notes, but what's the best way for people to get in contact with you?
Yeah, they can connect with me through Facebook and Messenger.
Yep.
So on Facebook, I'm Sue Giacobbe.
Yes.
And
You're a bit like me. Your name's quite unique, and you go by your name everywhere, right? Yeah.
yes. People say, "Oh, and what's your name? Sue Giacobbe. And what's your business name? Sue Giacobbe."
Yeah. You'll just find me on all the
Me and my
socials
business.
and
That's
my
me.
website. It's me. Yeah. Which is great. I love it.
Yeah. So my website is the same. It's Sue Giacobbe.
Dot
You can
com.
find me on my website. You can email me on sue@suegiacobbe.com. And Giacobbe is spelled Giacobbe.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Easy when
Absolutely.
you get your head around
Yeah, that is fantastic, Sue. Thank you so much. And just out of interest, I always like to ask, what is it, Sue, that you like to do for fun?
it. Dance.
Dance.
I love to dance.
Yes,
I
yes.
find dancing both enjoyable and healing, and it's my way of connecting to life and the joy and the celebration and all things fun. So, yeah,
I love
dancing.
that. I love a good dance as well. That's fabulous,
Yeah,
Sue.
yeah.
So thank you so much for being my guest, but also just being such a treasure. My day's made after having a chat with you. It's always fun. And so thank you so much.
My pleasure, Tony. And can I just say that if people do connect with me, I have a little free gift for them. And it is
Oh,
a
cool. What is
tool,
it? Sorry, I
a
didn't ask you about
tool.
that.
No, that's fine. It's a tool that all my clients uh, find very powerful when they use this tool. So
Yes.
it's an awareness mapping journal. So it's
Ah,
if they would like to become aware of their thoughts, the emotions that are attached to it, the behaviors that are attached to it, and what triggers them. Because when we become aware of this, we realize what's kind of holding us back, and then what can we do about it.
yeah.
I'd love to share this gift with them because, as we know, what we think about influences how we feel about things, and then that influences how we behave.
Yes. Consciousness equals awareness. We've got to be
Yes,
conscious of things if we want to change them, right?
yes.
Yeah, that's beautiful. All right, excellent. I'll make sure those details are in the show notes. Um, Definitely get that tool. Sue is a wealth of information and absolutely reach out to her to find out more about her trainings or working with her. And yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much, Sue.
Thank you, Tony. This has been fun and I have thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yes.